All right, hello everybody. Welcome to me fulfilling a lifelong dream, which is to host my own bracket selection show. So, with less than what do we have? 2012. We got 18 hours left until the first game tips off. So, this is my surely to be incorrect advice on maybe things to think about. With the matchups, obviously in the first round, but moving forward through the rest of the tournament. Let's share my screen here. Let's see here. I'm going to start in the South region, move my way down here to the east, and then I'll kind of swing back over here to the Midwest and the West. I will link this in the video post, but there's a awesome article written by Matt Norlander that if you like stats, I'll go to the top here. So it's like a 10-minute read or something, but numbers to know, vital stats when filling out your bracket. Just a couple that I want to point out here. Sorry for scrolling so fast. So one thing, Alabama's the number one overall seed here, only 3 times as the number one overall seed won the NCAA tournament since they started tracking this or began ranking this in 2004. So obviously Florida in 2007 when they won back-to-back, Kentucky in 2012, and Louisville in 2013 are the only times that that's happened. Kentucky beat Kansas and Louisville's was actually vacated. But Alabama's number one overall seed, so just something to keep in mind that that's not always a great predictor of who's actually going to win it. There's a couple more that I wanted to point out here. I think Purdue, Arizona, and Drake, I believe, are undefeated in neutral court games. So obviously all these games are not played at a home team's arena. Sometimes they're in the same city, but that's something to keep an eye out for. I think Drake's at 12 seed, Arizona's a 2 in the South, and then Purdue's obviously the 1 in the East. And what was the other thing that I wanted to point out? Yeah, even though UMBC beat Virginia a couple years ago, I think we're going to choose the 4-1 seeds here. 8 of the past 12 NCAA tournaments, at least 13 seeds defeated a 4. Kent State, like they have mentioned here, very popular to beat IU, but again, we'll talk about all that in just a second. The other thing, UMBC famously beat Virginia in 2018, but I don't see anything like that happening. In recent years, there's been an uptick in the number of 15s that have beaten 2 seeds, so that's something to kind of keep in mind. It's not a lot of great opportunity there, but the only other thing, really, this kind of region down here, I guess, really up here. So starting from the 5-12 all the way down to the 8-9, 9s have actually had a little bit more success against 8s in the past, but the 5-12, 6-11, 7-10 games, those are the really interesting ones. So I guess we'll get started here. Just some kind of things to know. So I'll pick these games as we go through here, and answer some questions that at least a couple people have sent to me. So we're gonna just go ahead and slot Alabama in here. We're gonna get rid of that. Yeah, all these 1 seeds, I'm even just gonna pick them right now. So all these 1 seeds, I don't think that they're realistically gonna be challenged that much. The only other thing that I forgot to mention right off the top, Gonzaga down here in the West region, I think they're the 3 seed. They've been to 7 straight Sweet 16s. I don't see that stopping anytime soon, so I'm just going to go ahead and fill them in here. That generally kind of breaks some bracket principles, but they've been playing extremely well offensively. Their defense is not that great, but they've been better. They really just trounced St. Mary's in the WCC title game, so I think that's going to continue. But okay, back here to the top of the bracket, Maryland and West Virginia are playing in the 8-9 game. Maryland has been a good team. They maybe in some ways have overperformed in their first year with Kevin Willard, but they have been very bad away from home. The last time I checked, this game is not being played in College Park. As you can see here, last 10 games, I mean, both teams have been bad, but home 5-0, away 0-5. I think a lot of their metrics are probably going to be pretty similar. can see, I guess, West Virginia's slightly better free throw shooting, but not by very much. But anyways, Maryland just lost in the Big Ten tourney to Indiana. They typically do not play very well away from home. West Virginia is a very physical, in your face style team. I think they're going to win and advance here. Bob Huggins is a great coach. Kevin Willard, first year Maryland, I think ends there. This 5-12 game between San Diego State and Charleston. San Diego State coming into the year had a lot of expectations. They didn't do so well to start out. They were in the Maui Invitational, kind of underperformed a little bit, and then they've been playing very well in the last really couple of months. Charleston is going to be a very trendy pick from a lot of people, and they won 31 games. I think 30 of those were D1 wins. They are not very high in KenPom. They're probably towards the bottom, 73 in KenPom, which there's only a handful of teams below them, and then they're of the 15-16 line. So KenPom, if you're not familiar, just a predictive analytics website that helps kind of see how all these teams stack up against each other. But they have the 71st ranked offense, 72nd ranked defense. I don't know. I think that I wouldn't be super surprised if Charleston won, but I just don't. I see San Diego State winning this game more than them losing, so I'm going to put them ahead. Furman, on the other hand, has not won a game in the NCAA tournament in like 50 years. They haven't been to the tournament in 40 plus years. Virginia obviously won the national championship in 2019. They've been to the Sweet 16 and I think the Elite Eight one other time in Tony Bennett's tenure. Virginia is a team that's really good at what they do, which is play good defense, and they're kind of methodical on offense. But I think that this is a spot you should look to find or that you should look for a 13 beating a 4. So there's a couple other games, like I mentioned before. Kent State is a popular pick, but I'm going to pick Furman here. Last year they heartbreakingly did not make the NCAA tournament on a buzzer beater in their conference tournament championship game. They've been really good for a while. They have experience. And Virginia is just, they, in the past, the good teams they've had kind of prototypical like pros on their team, whether it was DeAndre Hunter or Ty Jerome or even before that with Malcolm Brogdon. So I just don't see them. I could easily see a scenario where Furman shoots well, and Virginia just gets picked off there. This Creighton NC State game is very interesting. NC State is a pretty explosive team. They force a lot of turnovers, or they're mainly, I should say, they're opportunistic on forcing turnovers. They have some good guards. I think in their quarterfinal game in the ACC tournament, Jaquavion Smith and Joyner went for 50 combined points, so they can score a lot. Just from watching them briefly this year, they don't always take the best shots. They're kind of streaky. I would say they're a team that operates off vibes. Creighton has a very good starting five. They don't have much depth, but they did win a game last year, and then I think they pushed Kansas towards the brink at the end of their game. But I feel like Creighton is gonna pull this one out. I think that they'll get a good test from NC State, but I think that they've got a little bit better maybe resolve about them. Truthfully, I don't know a ton about UC Santa Barbara. You can see here they've won 27 games. I think that this could be a spot where maybe they give Baylor a good push, but you can see here a difference. Baylor's been tested. They played the Big 12, obviously, played some good teams in the non-conference. UC Santa Barbara, this will probably be the best team that they face all year. I haven't checked their schedule. You can see they're 5-2 in their last 7, or 5-2 at home, 2-1 away. They're 7-3 their last 10. Baylor's 6-4. But I just feel like Baylor's going to have too much, and they're going to win that game there. Utah State, Missouri is a very interesting game. I think you can see. So yeah, both teams are scoring at will, about 80 points a game. Utah State, I feel like, is pretty underrated, even though I think they're going to be favored in this game. You can see here Missouri's picked by most people. I'm picking Utah State here. Dennis Gates is in his first year at Missouri. And I think Ryan Odom, I believe, is the head coach at Utah State, who's a part of that UMBC upset in 2018. I feel like experience is helpful. I don't think Utah State's had a lot of success when it comes to the tournament, but I think that they can do a better job at what they do, and pick Missouri off there. I think this will be a very high scoring game, not anything different than what you'd hear from anybody else, but this will be a very fun game to watch. And generally the 7-10 games are kind of a 50-50. I think it's a case where maybe the 10 is actually, the 10 I think is favored in this game, and the one to look to. I think Arizona's going to get by Princeton. I don't foresee many issues there. Arizona is a very aesthetically pleasing team to watch. I have Purdue beating the winner of the Texas Southern Fairleigh Dickinson game that starts in like 8 minutes here. It's an interesting region. Purdue's been playing very well. I mean, they haven't been playing as well as they did at the beginning of the year lately, but they still won almost 30 games this year, won the Big Ten by 3 games, won the Big Ten tournament. So they're a very strong contender. And then we've got a bunch of other teams who have kind of been up and down. Tennessee, for parts of this year, looked invincible. They are very, very good defensively. Duke's won like 8 out of 9 games. They just won the ACC tournament. Kentucky obviously still has a lot of firepower. They have a lot of talent. Kansas State has probably overachieved this year under Jerome Tang in his first year. And then you got Michigan State down here in the bottom. Tom Izzo is, Mr. March always seems to find ways to put it together for his teams this time of year. And then Marquette has been phenomenal under Shaka Smart this year. This 8-9 game is very, very interesting. I'll just pull it up here. So Florida Atlantic's won 31 games this year. That's a lot of games. So my kind of barometer, I guess, for these 8-9 games or 12-5, 7-10 games when you have these smaller conference schools like Florida Atlantic is, at the end of the day, if you've won 31 out of 34 games, you know how to win. They obviously haven't played nearly as strong of a schedule. But I just feel like that kind of comes into play here. I think Florida Atlantic's only lost a couple of games since like Christmas, which makes sense because they only have 2 conference losses. Memphis has a ton of talents. They have 2 really good players in DeAndre Williams and Kendrick Davis. Kendrick Davis is a 6-foot guard. DeAndre Williams is more of a 6'9", I think, forward kind of stretch guy. They both went for 30 points in a game recently in their conference tournament. They have the ability to score at will. There's a lot of people who are predicting that Memphis wins this game and picks off Purdue. I think it could be a case where Memphis is maybe looking ahead just slightly, and Florida Atlantic picks them off. Like I said, they've won 31 out of 34 games. And I think a lot of people think they're underseeded in this 9 spot too, based off how well they played. So I'm going to actually pick Florida Atlantic. I think, a lot of times it's easy to get tripped up in thinking that the team that won the conference tournament is going to keep playing that way. So Memphis obviously has been very hot. They just beat Houston in the conference tournament championship, but I'm going to pick Florida Atlantic to win there. Oral Roberts, if you're familiar, they beat Ohio State in the 2021 tournament. So that was 2 years ago. And they still have some people from that team, most notably Max Asmus, who is a high scoring guard. They've lost 1 game, I think, since November 22nd, I believe. So you can see they ran the table in their conference. That's what these numbers in parentheses are here. They've only played 1 team in the top 25 and lost, so their strength of schedule isn't very good. They scored a ton of points, and they're pretty solid defensively, not as solid as Duke, but they're 10-0 in their last 10. I mean, I think they're a pretty good 3-point shooting team as well. Max Asmus isn't the only problem that Duke will have. They've got a 7'4", 7'5" guy named Connor Vanover who can shoot the 3 a little bit. Again, going back to kind of my point about FAU, Oral Roberts, they've won 30 games. They won 2 games in the in the tournament in 2021 when they beat Ohio State. And then I think they beat Florida. I can't remember who they beat, but they went to the Sweet 16. I think the fact that they've got that experience under their belt. My fun fact is, the last time John Shire was going into the NCAA tournament for the first time was back in 2006 as a player, 2007 as a player when Duke played VCU. They were a 5 seed. VCU was a 12 seed. Eric Maynor defeated them. So I'm picking Oral Roberts here. Sometimes you get these 12-5 games where everybody is picking the 12 to win. And sometimes that's just because they're going to win. Like I remember when Purdue played Arkansas Little Rock as a 5 seed and Arkansas Little Rock was a 12 seed. I remember hearing all week that everybody was picking Arkansas Little Rock, and Purdue was up by 14 or 15 points with only a few minutes left, and they ended up losing. Sometimes it just feels like the universe kind of conspires for that to happen. So I think Oral Roberts picks up a W here. I don't know anything about Louisiana, to be honest with you. I don't know how many wins they have. 26 wins, 13-5 in the Sun Belt. I think Tennessee wins here. Tennessee is an amazing defensive team who does not know how to score the basketball a lot of the time. So that'll be interesting. They might struggle for a little bit, but I think ultimately their physicality and ability to just disrupt teams' offensive rhythm will win them that game. This Kentucky Providence game is very interesting. Both teams kind of, I mean, I don't really remember what expectations Providence had at the beginning of the year, but Kentucky's certainly underperformed. They've been playing well as of late. They're 6-4, but they just lost in the SEC tournament, so that kind of knocks them down. But they finished the season strong and won at Arkansas in a pretty big game towards the end of the year. Big storyline here is that Providence's best player, Bryce Hopkins, transferred from Kentucky. So obviously he'll want to play well. But I just don't think – I think Kentucky's been playing well enough that, they'll move on. They might get pushed a little bit, but I would be really surprised if Providence won that game. I don't know anything about Montana State. Don't need to. Kansas State will win that game. USC, they've had a decent year. They have some good players. You can see 22-10 in the Pac-12. I know Michigan State's record doesn't look any better at 19-12, but they played a hard schedule and they've been playing very well as of late. I know that it says 5-5 here, but I think going into the Big Ten tournament, they lost in the first round to Ohio State, but going into the Big Ten tournament, they had shot something like 54% from 3 on over 100 attempts in their last 6 games. So I'm going to choose Michigan State here. Don't be fooled by Vermont down here. They haven't won a game in the NCAA tournament in nearly 20 years. Marquette's been playing great. We're going to choose Marquette. Okay, moving over here to the Midwest. Houston's going to advance. They're the best team in the country, right up there with Alabama. Iowa and Auburn in this 8-9 game is very interesting. Auburn is a much better defensive team than Iowa, but Iowa could outscore anybody. You can see here it's nearly a toss-up. Fred McCaffrey's not been very successful in the NCAA tournament with Iowa. He's never made a Sweet 16, never made one with Siena, but I think they're going to beat Auburn here. I think their ability to score is what will win them this game. I think this will be a higher scoring game, even though Auburn's good defensively. I don't know. I have a feeling that Iowa is going to avenge for their loss last year to Richmond in the first round after winning the Big Ten tournament, and at least win a game this year. Another 5-12 game here that we're going to look at, Miami and Drake. Drake is, I believe, a pretty old team. You can see here they went 27-7, nearly identical conference record, different conference to Miami. They're 1-0 against top 25. I don't remember who that's against. They're pretty good defensively, as you can see here, 64 points a game. And they've been playing well as of late, 9-1 in their last 10 to Miami's 8-2. My kind of gut feeling here is, Miami is good. They're kind of like Iowa where they can score with anybody. But they're not very good defensively. They blew a 25-point lead to Florida State a couple weeks ago, lost on a buzzer beater. So my gut feeling here is that, teams that usually are not very good defensively in the regular season and throughout. I mean, there's enough of a sample size there to kind of show you are what you are. The fact that it's 12-5 game already has me kind of thinking about the 12 over 5 upset. And then a lot of people, I think, are going to love the storyline that, the coach's son not only plays for Drake, but is the best player on their team. So Darian DeVries is the head coach at Drake. Tucker DeVries, his son, is the best player. I just feel like Drake's going to win this game. Jim Larinaga famously guided George Mason to the Final Four as an 11 seed when they beat UConn several years ago, and last year they made the Elite Eight as a 10 seed, I think it was, and it was either 10 or 7. I just feel like at some point things even out. You can't just have continual tourney luck. And while they lost on a buzzer beater a couple of years ago to Loyola Chicago, I feel like Drake's going to win that game. There's another trendy game right here, Indiana Kent State. I'm just going to go ahead and say right now I'm going to pick Indiana to win this game. Kent State is a super tough team. They played Houston tough at the beginning of the year. They played Gonzaga tough at the beginning of the year, but they didn't win. And even though those were road games, I remember watching St. Mary's demolish IU last year. And, they brought a lot of people back. A lot of people thought they were going to win the Big Ten. What did they end the year at? 22-10, or before they lost in the Big Ten tournament. So I guess they're 21-10. Anyways, I think that the difference this year is that this is going to be Trace Jackson Davis's last year. He's Indiana's best player. They have a pro at guard and Jalen Hood-Schifino on their team. I feel as though Indiana is going to find a way to win this game on the back of Trace Jackson Davis. I think this will be a very close game. Late tip on Friday night. I don't see Trace Jackson Davis letting them lose in the first round. I think that they're going to get by Kent State, whether that's last second shot or last second stop, or just them pulling away in the last 2 minutes. I think Indiana wins this game, but I don't think that they do it super comfortably. Iowa State Pittsburgh might be the ugliest basketball game that you ever watch. Iowa State will win that game because they are better at making games uglier. They do not have very much offense, even though they have some good players, but they are very good at what they do defensively. And I think Pittsburgh's run will end there. They just basically played Iowa State in the Mississippi State team that they lost to, and Iowa State is better at doing what Mississippi State tries to do. So that's my pick for that game. I think Xavier wins against Kennesaw State. I don't think Kennesaw State's ever been in the NCAA tournament, and I don't foresee them staying very long. Texas A&M Penn State's another very interesting game. This will be a similar style, I guess, to Iowa State Pittsburgh, but it'll be a much prettier game. So Penn State shoots a ton of threes, and they have some really good guards. Seth Lundy is a bigger guard, and Jalen Pickett's obviously a bigger guard, but Jalen Pickett's an All-American. They're just very good at doing what they do in terms of getting to the spots they want to get to. And Micah Shrewsbury, I think, is, even though Buzz Williams has had success at Marquette and now Texas A&M, I think that Micah Shrewsbury is a better coach. I think that he is more gel with his guys, and they have a more sustainable approach. They're a better shot making team. Texas A&M gets to the free throw line a lot. They have a good defense, but I think Penn State's played enough good defense at this point, and they're playing very well. I'm going to go ahead and pick Texas before I talk myself out of them. Colgate is the best shooting team from both 2 and 3 in the country. I think this will be a close game until like the last 6 minutes. Colgate's never won in the NCAA tournament. I think they're 0-5. They've never won in the postseason, even though they've played teams like Tennessee close and Wisconsin close. I just don't think that they're going to win this game, and it'll be close for a while. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. This would be, of the 2-15 games. Of the 2-15 games, this one and the Marquette Vermont game are the only ones that I would look to as picking the 15 seed. But I think Texas is ultimately going to win this game, even though it'll be close. They might be down at halftime. But if Colgate wins this game, they're going to have to make like 15 threes. And I think maybe they'll make 10, and they'll be playing very well. But I don't think that they're gonna have enough to pull it off. All right. Last region here. Let me just check to make sure I'm answering all the questions. Yeah, so I think that's pretty good. Okay. This Arkansas Illinois game is going to be the battle of who will underachieve the most throughout this entire season. Arkansas has 2 lottery picks on their team. Illinois has a ton of talent. On paper, both these teams should win like 30 games, and they both barely got to 20. So you can see here. More people are picking Arkansas. I think that's because they've made the last 2 Elite Eights, but they struggled in both of those runs that they had. One of them they played lower seeds, and then the other one um, they nearly lost to, I think it was Vermont and then New Mexico State, and probably should have lost one of those games. I'm picking Illinois just because I can't not believe in them, and I think that they have enough. They have enough talent. They have enough older talent. Matthew Meyer on their team played at Baylor, won a national championship. Terrence Shannon played at Texas Tech, been in the tournament before. RJ Melendez been in the tournament last year when they played Houston, along with Luke Goody and Coleman Hawkins. I don't know. I feel like Coleman Hawkins at 6'10", who honestly plays like a point guard for Illinois, is going to pose enough matchup issues for Arkansas that it's going to cause some issues. Arkansas, like I said, has a ton of talent. They've been to 2 Elite Eights in a row. And sometimes narratives get formed because of that, but people kind of forget what happened to get there. I honestly don't know what's going to happen in this game, but I, in my gut, feel like Illinois is going to finally have a little bit of success this season, but also in the tournament. And I just believe in them more than Arkansas this year, even though Arkansas has a ton of talent. Thinking if I missed anything from that. Yeah, this is a complete toss up. But I do think Illinois wins the game. VCU St. Mary's is interesting. People are more familiar with St. Mary's now, but I still think they like discredit them a little bit. As you can see here, both teams are pretty similar offensively and defensively. St. Mary's is very good at what they do. Before, in previous years, really before last year, they were still kind of like just a fun team that a lot of these predictive analytics and metrics liked, but they, would fall short. Last year, people remember they walloped Indiana. I think this year they're going to beat VCU. This is another, all these 12-5 games are really kind of toss ups, but I would pick St. Mary's here. They're really good. And I think that they are a more cohesive unit than most teams in the country, and they'll be able to play the game more on their terms than VCU will. They're a little bit better, I think, at what they do than VCU, and I'm picking them to win this game. UConn Iona is a very, very interesting game. Danny Hurley at UConn has not won in the tournament, I don't believe. I think he's 0-2. He has a very good team this year. At times, they look like they were the best team in the country. Rick Pitino coaches at Iona. You remember him from his time at Louisville, maybe his time at Kentucky, and elsewhere. But obviously, a Hall of Fame coach that will be able to scheme up against UConn. But I think this is going to be another one of those games where Iona's in it for a while. I think they were in it against Alabama a couple years ago, but I don't think that they're going to end up pulling this off. I think UConn's going to win this game, and I think that will be kind of the first challenge that they face. And then I think they're going to kind of take off here. Spoiler alert, I've got UConn advancing here. Maybe even further than the round of 32. TCU will win whoever they play against Arizona State and Nevada. They've been great all year. They're down Eddie Lampkin, one of their best players. But I still think they've got enough talent, even if they just grind out a win, more so defensively than anything. So I got TCU advancing there. Northwestern, Boise State, another interesting game. Northwestern is maybe one of the more frustrating teams to play against, again, because they're very good at what they do. But I think that bodes in their favor, especially in a tournament format, where if you can be really sustainable at something that you do that isn't dependent on how officials call things or just making a ton of shots, like you're going to do well. And Boo Buie, their guard, has the capability to have a huge NCAA tournament performance, maybe upset UCLA here in the second round. But I think certainly they have enough to get past Boise State Boise State's had a good year in the tournament again. You see they won 24 games. I don't know. I think Northwestern's been playing great all year. What are they? They're 6-4 in the last 10, but they've had some big wins. Even though they score a little bit less, I don't know. I feel like Northwestern, the universe is conspiring for them to at least win one game. I got UCLA moving on here, and I think that completes the first round. So, yeah, so that's all the first round here. We'll move on, starting here in the South, or back up to the South, I should say. Alabama has been so consistent pretty much all year. They've had one dud against Oklahoma where they lost by, almost 40 points, ended up being closer to like 20, but they're down by a ton. I think they get past West Virginia. I think West Virginia makes this a really tough, kind of slows them down, makes a really physical game. I could see a scenario in which they end up winning, but I just don't know if they'll be able to hit enough shots to beat Alabama. Alabama, you can only stop them so much. They're going to lose because they, shoot 35 threes and only make like 5 of them in one of these games. But I don't think that they're getting beat here. Maybe as much as some people would want them to be. But yeah, I think they're going to get past West Virginia. They've been more consistent and good at what they do. And at the end of the day, they have the best player on the court. This 5-13 game between San Diego State and Furman is interesting. Again, you really shouldn't do this when you pick games, but kind of feels like in this spot, San Diego State's in the Mountain West. The Mountain West has not been particularly successful in the tournament. I think if Furman finds a way to beat Virginia, they're also going to win their next game. So I'm going to pick Furman here to win this game. I don't have a ton of reasons or a ton of like data to support that. Just kind of feels like when these double-digit seeds are able to move on, they can win a game. This is also just, I don't have a lot of faith in San Diego State moving forward. Like I said, they were coming into this year very highly thought of. They kind of fell flat in the NCAA tournament last year, but Furman not being in the tournament for 4 decades, able to get their first win against what's been the top 5, top 10 team for most of the year in Virginia. I think pushes them forward. Creighton Baylor is a very interesting game. Baylor is very good offensively and not so good defensively. Creighton has one of the best starting 5s in the country. And they fell short last year, and I think they'll push on and get to the Sweet 16 this year. Baylor, just like, they've had some people get hurt, some people come back. In the last couple of games, they lost 2 games in a row to Iowa State, got bounced from the first game of the Big 12 tourney. I think that they just haven't really been able to fully put it together as of late. I just can kind of visualize Creighton winning that game. I think this will be a very exciting game, but Arizona will beat Utah State and move on. Very high scoring, very up and down. All right, we move down here to the East. Purdue FAU. I mentioned before, FAU's got 30 plus wins on the year. They're very talented. They're very good. They're not to be overlooked. But I think after last year, losing to a team that a lot of people on paper thought that Purdue should beat, I think that they win against Florida Atlantic just because of the size advantage they have with Zach Edey. Florida Atlantic's got a 7-footer on their team, but I think that there's enough of a supporting cast outside of Zach to make some shots, but even having a 7-footer sometimes doesn't really benefit you going against a guy who's 7'4", 300 pounds. So I'm going to pick Purdue to move on there. Oral Roberts, Tennessee, I think 2 months ago or a month ago or even like 3 weeks ago, before Zakai Ziegler got hurt for Tennessee, I'd probably pick Tennessee to win this game. I'm going to pick Oral Roberts to win this game. I don't remember what the exact stat is. I think something in the last like 10 years, or no, the last 8 tournaments, we've had a higher than a 7 seed advance to at least to the Sweet 16, if not further. So I've got 2 now with Furman and Oral Roberts. Once again, Tennessee is very, very good defensively. They're giving up something like 86 points per 100 possessions at one point this year. That's dropped because Zakai Ziegler again got hurt, one of their point guards. I think that Oral Roberts is good enough offensively They have guys that are on their team that have been there. They have a coach that's been there, that's done that and made it to a Sweet 16. And I think they advance here. Kentucky, Kansas State, really interesting. Keontae Johnson and Marquise Noel for Kansas State have been great all year. Sometimes watching them offensively isn't super great. It doesn't look like they just are running sets or they're just kind of like playing. But I honestly just feel like Kentucky's going to put things together. Kentucky was a preseason top 5 team. They returned the National Player of the Year in Oscar Tshiebwe. I think he will play well against Kansas State, who doesn't have a super formidable big man, even though Tshiebwe isn't really a huge big man. But I think Kentucky advances here, and I think they get to a Sweet 16. And then down here, Marquette's the 2 seed, so second highest rated team in this region. They won a ton of games. They won the Big East outright. They won the Big Ten or the Big East tourney outright. Michigan State did neither of those things. They lost in their first game of the conference tournament. And I don't think any of that matters because I think Michigan State wins this game. They've been red hot from 3, with the exception of their first game and only game in the Big Ten tournament. But again, experience matters. And I think this is a place where you see a high seed go down. And that's Marquette. Not because they're not a good team, but just because the spot of Tom Izzo being a Hall of Fame coach and knowing how to get the most out of his team this time of year and knowing how to beat higher seeded teams, or I guess lower seeded teams, will prove to be advantageous. So I've got them advancing there. I think Houston will obliterate whoever they play, whether it's Iowa or Auburn. So you should just have them put into the Sweet 16. Houston's down one of their best players, maybe for the first round, maybe for the second round, if they advance, Marcus Sasser. So that's something to keep your eyes out for. But I'm assuming that he's healthy and able to go. And at the end of the day, I think that their physicality and their ability on defense will move them past Iowa, who can pretty much score against anybody. Drake, Indiana is a very intriguing game. Like I said before, Drake's an older team. Their best player is the coach's son. I think those storylines typically, get broadcast and people follow all over them come March. But again, they don't have Trace Jackson Davis. Jalen Hood-Schifino is a pro. Indiana's supporting cast has been playing well as of late. I know they lost to Penn State in the Big Ten tournament, but I just think they're going to be too much for Drake. And I think they advance there. I'm putting Xavier ahead. They're down their 3rd leading scorer in Zach Freemantle. He's out for the year now. But Iowa State, very, very good defensively. They're one of these teams kind of, I don't know, similar to some of the other ones I've talked about, like not necessarily Pittsburgh, but like Texas A&M or, I guess Kent State's an example here over here. These are teams that kind of like to not play basketball. And what I mean by that is just make things difficult. So they're very good defensively, but sometimes they don't really know what to do offensively, and that's not always great. Penn State Texas is an interesting game to me. Let's see. I've already got a 2 losing, so this is a pretty wonky bracket. I got kind of chalk down here. I honestly don't really know how to view this game, but I'm going to pick Penn State just because I think Texas has been playing well all year. Like I said, I think that this Texas Colgate game will be interesting at the beginning of it. And I think they'll ultimately push on. But I think once they see that they have maybe Penn State and they've got, Xavier, these teams that they probably will feel like they're a little bit superior to, that they could match up with Houston, say, in a regional final. I feel like Penn State's got the ability to clip them off. Penn State is, like I said, a team who shoots a ton of threes. And if they get hot, they can beat anybody. And Michael Shrewsbury is a very, very good coach. He was on the bench for 2 national title runs with Butler and Brad Stevens. Rodney Terry obviously is the interim coach who's taken over for Chris Beard this back half of the regular season. But I want to take a swing somewhere, and I'm taking a swing with Penn State because they've been playing well. They have older guys. Jalen Pickett's got the ability to go off. Seth Lundy's got the ability to go off. They have a bunch of shooters, and I don't think that they're going to be intimidated by Texas's physicality and athleticism because they've had to play against similar teams Not necessarily just in the Big Ten, but I just think that they're not going to be daunted by the challenges that Texas will bring them. And I think they can pose a lot of challenges to another team. So I'm going to take a swing here and say Penn State beats Texas and advances to the Sweet 16. Down here, I don't have a one seed losing yet. And as silly as it seems to do, there hasn't been a repeat national champion since 2006, 2007 in Florida. Kansas obviously won last year. Nothing in your right mind should tell you that Illinois will win, let alone one game, and even more so 2 games in the NCAA tourney. But I'm going to pick Illinois here. Kansas does not have a super big, center, like prototypical big guy on the middle. KJ Adams is like 6'7", but he plays like he's 7 feet tall because he's so athletic and can jump. But both Arkansas and Kansas, I think, are going to play a style that Illinois likes to play, which is just run the ball up and down, put a ton of shots up, and just see whose athletes can match up with whose. And I think Illinois is primed for that. They're good defensively. I think they're pretty sneaky in that. And if they can get past Arkansas, I think that they can win this game. I don't know what the health status of Bill Self is, the head coach for Kansas. That obviously didn't affect them until they played Texas in the Big 12 tournament title. But I don't think they're going to win it all. And I think if they keep advancing and they get past this game right here, that there's a chance they could end up making a run. But I just, generally speaking, it always kind of feels like a one seed's going to lose in the second round in that 8-9 game. I have Purdue making it out, and I don't think the others will be particularly challenged, but I think Kansas is vulnerable to be knocked off if a team like, either Arkansas or Illinois gets hot, makes shots and can push them. So I'm going to have Illinois moving here, kind of probably my second big swing and knocking off the defending champs. I think UConn will beat St. Mary's, just their size inside with Klingon and Sonogo and some of their outside shooting. I think that UConn, really for them, their hurdle that they need to get over is beating Iona in this first game. And then I think that they're going to kind of have the pressure off them. And I think they'll take care of St. Mary's here, despite what I said about St. Mary's being a solid team. By default, I've got Gonzaga beating TCU. Like I said, they made 7 Sweet 16s, and I don't think that's going to stop anytime soon. This Northwestern UCLA game, it's really interesting. UCLA just lost their best defender, one of the best defenders in the entire country, in Jalen Clark. And Northwestern has some older guys. Chase Audige is very good defensively and can score in bunches. I already said Boo Buie can score a ton of points. UCLA has been very successful in the tournament these past several years with Mick Cronin. Jaime Jaquez is incredible. They have the luxury of, they lose the best defender on their team and probably in the country, and they replace it with a 5-star, freshman. And or I don't know if he's a freshman, but they replace it with a 5-star, talent. The tournament's crazy, and as much as I hate to say this in the moment, I feel like Northwestern will win this game somehow, some way. Ironically enough, Michigan State USC and Northwestern UCLA would be future Big Ten matchups. I don't know. I think honestly, no matter who wins this game is not beating Gonzaga. I think Gonzaga is being overlooked this year. But UCLA has had a lot of fortune in the tournament as of late, and I think they're vulnerable. And I think a team like Northwestern, who will just make them play the style of basketball they want to play. I don't know. I can see them kind of riding out this Cinderella story, and UCLA bowing out earlier than they probably should. All right, going back up here, Alabama, I think, has a nice path to the Elite Eight. I don't think that even if they play Virginia or San Diego State, they're going to really get tested. They're just too athletic, shoot too many shots, and it's going to take a real effort, not only from a team, but I think it's going to be more offensively minded, but also it's going to take them missing a lot of shots. I think they get past whoever they play here. Creighton, Arizona, I think this is where Creighton's run ends. I've got Arizona winning this game. Arizona is very good offensively. They have a ton of size in Omar Ballo and Zulis Tabelis. I think a lot of people don't pay attention to them because they play on the West Coast, which sounds silly, but when their games are tipping off at 11:30 at night, most people don't watch. I think Arizona, similarly to Bama, I think they're on a collision course here in the Elite Eight. Down here, I think Oral Roberts' run ends in the Sweet 16 again. And I think, yeah, I think that Purdue advances to their second Elite Eight in a couple of years, and has themselves a nice position. Again, I mean, this could easily get blown up and probably will get blown up, but Memphis has a ton of talent. They could easily win and then beat Purdue. They could go to the Elite Eight. There's a ton of ways that this could go, but I think that ultimately Oral Roberts doesn't have Zach Edey. Florida Atlantic doesn't have Zach Edey. Even if Memphis wins, they don't have Zach Edey. It's just a complete mismatch. And I think Purdue's been playing well enough as of late, especially shooting the ball from three, that they can carry that momentum. And at the end of the day, they won the Big Ten by 3 games, and they won the Big Ten tournament. They've had an amazing year. There's no reason to think that they can't return to older form in, say, November, December. Kentucky, Michigan State is a classic March matchup. Famously, these two teams played in the Elite Eight in 2005. Michigan State won that game, but went to overtime. I think Michigan State pulls this off and sets up a very interesting matchup in the Elite Eight with Purdue. Kentucky has loaded with talent. Like I said, they're a top 5 preseason team, and they have a ton of talent. They returned the National Player of the Year in Oscar Tshiebwe, but I think that they've been a little bit too inconsistent, and some of their youth or some of their weaknesses Izzo will exploit and allow them to move on. All right, going back up here to the top right, Indiana, Houston. Kelvin Sampson used to coach Indiana. This will be a fascinating game from a storyline perspective. I think if Marcus Sasser is seriously hurt, Indiana will win this game. But this is a couple weeks away at this point. Houston might not even need him to beat Iowa. Of course, they'd love to have him, but certainly don't need him to win their first game. Maybe don't need him to win this game. But even so, we're talking a week and a half out for Marcus Sasser to get back. I think that they are just so physical and so good at what they do, and they have the experience that they're going to be locked in, ready to go. This feels like a spot that Indiana should win, but I think back to last year when Houston was playing against Illinois in the tournament, and I really felt like Illinois was in the perfect spot to beat Houston, and they did not. So I'm gonna just stick with the team who's been basically the best team all year from a analytics perspective, and choose them to win. Down here, I have Xavier and Penn State playing, and Xavier's been very good all year. Like I said, they lost their third best player, third best scorer, I guess you could say. A lot of the numbers here are very similar. Xavier's a little bit better offensively than Penn State is, a little bit worse defensively. I think this is a game where Xavier wins because Penn State doesn't shoot very well. I think that Penn State is hot against Texas. They win, they squeak out a game or grind out a game against Texas A&M, but I think the road ends here because Xavier just is either a little bit better than them offensively, or Penn State just doesn't shoot the ball as well, or maybe a combination of both. But I think Sean Miller gets to the Elite Eight in his first year back at Xavier, and they play Houston to go to the Final Four. Down here, I think UConn rolls over Illinois. Again, I think Illinois returns to the water finds its level a little bit, so to speak, for how they've been the whole year, which is they, underachieve, go back to underachieving. And UConn, I mean, at times earlier this year played like the best team in the country, and I think that they're trending back in that direction. So I'm going to pick them, and I'm going to pick Gonzaga here, honestly, to blow out Northwestern. Like I said, I think the lack of success some of the Big Ten's had, I think will even out a bit this year, and they'll have some more success. But I don't see them getting past Gonzaga. Gonzaga's got too many good players, too many good shooters. They're too good offensively. In Northwestern, I don't think we'll be able to keep pace with them. So we've got a lead eight here set. Alabama, Arizona, 1-2. Purdue, Michigan State, 1-7. UConn, Zaga here at 4-3. And then Houston, Xavier in the 1-3 matchup. Okay, I said earlier about how only a couple of times the overall number 1 seed has won the national championship. I think if Alabama makes the Final Four, they're winning it all. So by that logic, I've got Arizona winning here. Tommy Lloyd, is a great coach. He was at Gonzaga for a long time, obviously at Arizona now. I think that they have the size to match up with Alabama and also the offensive ability to match up with Alabama. Alabama is very good defensively, but I think that this could be one of those times where they get a little bit behind and they get a little bit tense, and that's when they start maybe not shooting as well, end up with one of those 7 for 30 or 5 for 28 nights shooting the ball. And I think Arizona's size will be able to match up with them well enough to where they can exploit Alabama inside a little bit and also just match up with them outside. So I've got Arizona making the Final Four out of the South. Down here, it's very difficult to beat a team 3 times, as the saying goes, but Purdue just did that twice in the Big Ten tourney with Ohio State and with Penn State. And I think if they get to this point, Purdue's size for the 3rd time is going to be too much of an issue for Michigan State. I think that their shooting will fall off a bit. Purdue's defense, which has been trending in the right direction, I think will help that. And I don't foresee Tyson Walker or AJ Hogarth going off for 50 points combined. I think that they have a little bit of a regression more to the mean in terms of the 3-point shooting. And I think Purdue, for the first time since 1980, gets over the hump there. Up in this is the Midwest region. I think if Houston gets to this point, they're not losing. They've been to the Final Four. They went to the Elite Eight last year before they lost to Villanova. The Final Four is in Houston this year. I think that they're just destined to get there. They have a really good team, even though people want to say that they play in a really bad conference. But they have old guards, they have good guards, they have a lottery pick. These are all things that really help you just to be successful in the tournament, because at the end of the day, having talent really does matter, especially when you have a lot of it, because you might not have somebody who shows up one night. But Jarris Walker is going to be a lottery pick. Obviously, Shed and Sasser have been there for a while, and they know what it takes to get that far, and I think they'll do it. Down here, I've got an awesome Elite Eight. In my opinion, this would be an awesome Elite Eight game between Gonzaga and UConn. I think it's a toss-up, but for whatever reason, I have a feeling that Gonzaga is going to get to the Final Four this year. They have been under-talked about, considering that they were the #1 overall seed the past 2 years, and they just haven't been able to get over the hump in terms of winning a national championship with Mark Few. And I think that this year they kind of surprised some people by going on a run here. I mean, I think that they'll blow out Grand Canyon. I think this will be a tough game against TCU. They ultimately win by 10 to 12 points, and I think they win by 20 or 30 here against Northwestern, similarly to how they played against St. Mary's. I think UConn, after a tough game against Iona, kind of does something similar where they win by double digits in their next 2 games, and I think this is a really fascinating game. I think my brain should tell me that UConn will win this game because they're better defensively and, not that far behind offensively. It's been much talked about that in the NCAA tournament, the teams that are very balanced offensively and defensively, like in the top 25 or 30 of both of those metrics, generally tend to make the runs or tend to win it all. Gonzaga has a very bad defense. I shouldn't pick them, but I think that they will make it to Houston. So I got a Final Four of Arizona, Purdue, Houston, and Gonzaga. I think that Purdue playing against Arizona is a tough matchup because Arizona has a fair amount of size. I mean, they have, I think, like 2 7-footers in Tabellas and Omar Ballo, and they're skilled and their guards are pretty good. I think Purdue gets over the hump, gets to their first Final Four. I think they play a good game with Arizona, but I think Arizona wins this game. Arizona has been very good against the teams that are good. They won the Maui Invitational. They've lost, how many total games? They lost 6 games. All of them were in the Pac-12, and pretty much all of them, with the exception of UCLA, were to bad teams. But they've played really well against the very good teams. You can see they score 82 points a game. They give up 71, but they score a ton of points. I think that their ability to run, get in transition, and just their size will be too much for Purdue. I think that's where the road ends. And then I think this is where the road also ends for Gonzaga. I think they get to the Final Four. I could easily see them winning this game and winning a national championship in a year when nobody thinks that they will. But I think that Houston, ultimately their ability to be so strong defensively. Again, this is assuming that Marcus Sasser is healthy. I think that will propel them forward and take them all the way to the national championship. And then I think if they do get this matchup with Arizona, they're good enough to win. You know, Houston for the majority of the year has been basically the best team in terms of how good offensively and how good defensively they are, and what the difference is between those two metrics for them, which corresponds basically to how much they beat teams by. I think if you're looking for teams that will win, you're looking for teams. I'll go to the Ken Palm right here. You're looking for teams here in this adjusted offense and defense that are in that top 20 mark. So that'd be Houston, Alabama, again, UCLA in here. Their defense is very good. Connecticut, Tennessee, you can see offensively they're not as good as they are defensively. Purdue is in this category. Texas is in this category. Gonzaga is not in this category, which is, again, why I think that they might ultimately fall short just because of their defensive numbers. Kansas, Arizona, and I guess Creighton's pretty close to this category. But that being said, I think that there's really 4 or 5 teams you should be looking at. Houston, obviously, one of them. And that's ultimately who I'm going to have winning this game. So I think Houston wins that game. I think they win the national championship in Houston. Yeah, it feels like this is the smart pick in terms of a team that can win it all. Obviously, if Marcus Sasser is hurt and not able to play, I think that changes the dynamic here. Like I said, I think that they could get knocked off by Indiana up here. They could easily get knocked off in the Elite Eight, no matter who they play, especially if it's Texas or even if it's Penn State. But I think that Marcus Sasser will be healthy. I think he'll come back. They've had bad injury luck. Tremont Mark, I think he got hurt last year, or Shed, I can't remember which, but I think that they right the ship, so to speak. They get their guys healthy, and that they win the Final Four. They win the national championship in Houston and close out the season strong here. I'm just going to check real quick. So I think I've pretty much covered all the main questions that I've got. Yeah. Obviously, none of this will be right and I'll be wrong, but I wanted to, one, fulfill my lifelong dream of hosting my own bracket show, and two, offer an outlet and serve as a sounding board for all the useless college basketball knowledge that I have. I think ultimately you want to go with a national champion who is of that high echelon offense and defensive team. So Houston, Purdue, I don't think, where was Arizona? I'll have to go back. Houston, Purdue, UCLA, Alabama, UConn. These are all teams you should probably be looking at. Marquette as well. These are all teams you should probably be looking at. Marquette's not as good defensively, but all teams that you should be looking at that can make a run because they have just shown consistency throughout the year. But it doesn't mean that they all have to get to the Final Four. And I do think that there's a reasonable chance for all 4 of these teams to make it, especially teams like Gonzaga and Houston and Arizona. I think Purdue, like people have pointed out, might have a really tough matchup here in the second round. They will have a tough matchup if they can advance, whether it's Memphis or FAU. But from there, they beat Duke, they beat Marquette, they beat Michigan State in this region. And at the end of the day, you only have to beat 6 teams. You don't have to beat the other 67. So again, all this is probably wrong and it's probably pointless, but I hope that some of this was at least helpful to think about how to go about picking your bracket. And if you're still watching, thanks for watching, and you're great. Appreciate it.